Yeah, we're going to go over a few of the current affairs that are going on right now. I think one of the big ones is the H.R. 1 bill. And Chuck Schumer wants to introduce it as the S1 in the Senate. Now, they're acting like this is a brainstorm that they came up with and they're geniuses. But I got news for you. This same thing has been being pushed on since 1965. And they knew back then, going back to the whole coloring book, going out of lines a little bit, that they had passed a law on that. Because after that, after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, they had taxes being put on polls so that the minority people that weren't allowed to vote, now they still can't vote because they can't afford the taxes. So they put in a bill which is similar to this H.R. 1. But they only made it temporary because they knew they weren't allowed to pass a law like that because voting is done on a state legislator's level. So they knew it. So they just put it. It was just a temporary couple of months. We're going to put this in so we get a few elections and the states can fix this problem, this gerrymandering they have, and the taxing at the ballots. Well, they continued to advance this same bill since 1965 because they color out of the lines more and more, and they made the temporary go to 5 years, and then 10 years, and then 20 years. And now it's back up again, and it's being reintroduced as the H.R. 1 bill.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with this bill, again, it's on our website, and you can see for yourself what Jack's talking about. And you can see we mentioned about these bills being pages and pages long. I mean, read it for yourself. It's hard to read if you don't have a law degree. I mean, like I said, it's H.R. 1 in the House of Representatives called the Voting, Campaign, Finance, and Ethics. Ethics. All politicians lack ethics, I believe.
Yeah.
On the outside, the bill looks great.
Yeah. You go back to, this last bill, this COVID bill they're trying to pass, and saying that they're writing this bill. They're writing it. So you're going to tell me that a representative from Oklahoma thought it was a good idea to put $180 million for a subway from Silicon Valley over to San Francisco? Right. Like he thought that was going to represent his constituents? Who wrote that? A special interest.
Why can't they separate these bills, into voting, campaign, finance, and ethics? But no, they got to incorporate them all together to make it confusing so people don't know what's in it. It's crazy.
They don't know what's in it.
Right. Again, they know we won't do the research that we should be doing. And we said, like I said, well, we'll believe them.
Yeah, I'll get my $1,400 out of it.
Hey, look, I believe in free and secure elections with identification. It's funny. I walk into Spectrum, and to pay my bill, I need your ID. It's like, why? They don't need it for voting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
But it's okay. People say, okay, here's my ID. And you go to the election, can I see your ID? No. Okay, you can vote. It's crazy. I mean, you have to think for a minute, why? Why is it okay that these Democrats don't want people to have IDs? I mean, they're trying to get something over on us. It's got to end.
And how about the Republicans not doing anything? How is there no outrage? And, we have 4 branches of government, which we'll go over on another podcast, because right now we're just hitting the Declaration of Independence, and we're just scratching the surface. I mean, there was 27 complaints against King George III, why they did the Revolutionary War.
We can probably have 100 complaints against what's going on now.
Exactly. My brother just moved down here to South Carolina with us. He was in Pennsylvania.
Welcome.
Yeah, he was a registered Democrat. We won't hold it against him, but he didn't have ID. So when he went to vote the last 2 times in Pennsylvania, they asked for his ID. He says, I don't have ID. I'm a registered Democrat. And they said, oh, okay, go ahead. For 2 elections. That's what they did. They don't know who he is, where he come from. He could have been coming from Illinois. I just voted in Illinois yesterday. I'm coming down to Pennsylvania to vote again.
It's crazy. I mean, what about the campaign finance? I mean, fair elections. I mean, way too much money is spent on these elections. I mean, we need to even the playing field and get these big corporations and special interests and lobbyists out of the political climate. I mean, say like $10 million for a federal election. I think that's good enough, But that needs to be decided. I mean, this way, the politicians will stop catering to these special interest groups.
Yeah, well, I think these politicians are even trying to get away from the control that the special interest has on them, because in this H.R. 1 bill also states that you're going to have tax-funded money going to their campaign. So if somebody donates $200 to a candidate that's running for Congress,
I think it's like 6-1.
Yeah, so he gets that Congress politician gets the $200 that was donated to them, plus now, because it's 6-1, another $1,200 of tax dollars
of our money
going. So if you don't like that representative, well, too bad. Your tax dollars went to them. So special interest, you may be thinking that we're blowing smoke up everybody's ass and we're for the little guy. You're getting cut out too, because now when they have tax dollars, they don't need you anymore. And the biggest thing for them is whatever they don't use on campaigns from 10 years from now, they get to keep. So they get to keep our tax dollars plus our donation. And if they lose, they keep it anyway.
Yep, they sure do. And one part of the bill, which stands out to me, is they want to let convicted felons be voters. They say 5.2 million people have been convicted of crimes, don't get a chance to vote. I don't know about you, but if someone commits like a murder or a violent crime, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. If you decide to commit a crime, so why should you be allowed to vote? I mean, some of the drug convictions, yeah, they serve their time. I can agree with that. But if you're doing life in jail, no way in heck should you be allowed to vote.
Here's another smaller example of that. Again, these politicians on the federal level, they try all of these things out on the local level first. My brother was on the police department also. And we had a mayor, David Dinkins, in New York City, who was putting applications for the police department in Rikers Island, which is a holding cell for people that are arrested and waiting for trial or placement in a state system. And my brother was at work one day, and he gets a call from an investigator and says, I have a so-and-so applied for the police department, and we see that you had arrested him. And we just wanted to see what your feeling was if he got hired to the police department. So can you believe this? My brother arrests a criminal, spends time away from his family to process this and make the streets of New York City safer, so that this person can come out of jail and now work side by side with my brother. You think that's going to go well, sitting in the car together? So, how was the last 5 years that I sent you up the river?
That is crazy.
So, if you don't think these plans haven't been tried yet, these federal politicians, they're not smart, and they're not forward-thinking, and they're not innovators. Smart. They're copycatters.
Yeah, they think they're smart. Another part is for that voting is a state may not refuse to treat an individual as an eligible individual if they're under 18 years of age. They want 16-year-olds to vote, Jack. Yeah. At 16 years old, were you worrying about politics?
16 years old, I was wondering how to get rid of that hickey before my mother saw it.
That's a good one. And they also want to make D.C. a state. Did you read that in it?
Yeah, and Puerto Rico.
I didn't see Puerto Rico, and I just saw the...
Well, actually, they're not talking about having the states become... Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico becoming a state. What that's being... If you look at that a little closer, what they're saying is that they're saying, we feel it's okay...
for them to become a state.
That they should become a state.
Because we have the final say.
Right. And so they're saying, again, just like the bureaucracies when they pass laws and the Supreme Court upholds it because the Congress gave them the power to make laws. Well, if they pass this bill and Congress and the Senate, if the representatives and the Senate both agree that, yes, these two places should become states, well, then it's okay, and it will take the Supreme Court out of the argument again, because the Supreme Court will not hear that case.
You know where the case is going to be heard? D.C.
Yeah.
Court of Appeals in D.C. It doesn't go any higher than that.
Yeah.
So you know what they are? liberal justices.
Yeah.
You'll never win, folks. Never. You know, I mean, like I said, check out their website. I put HR1 on there, and I mean, you can see for yourself how confusing it is. I mean, just to give an example, striking out subparagraph C, resigning subparagraph D, a subparagraph A, F, and inserting subparagraph C in the following. You know, unless you're a lawyer, you can't follow it. It is so confusing.
The introduction, the where they do the chapters and everything else on if you want to look at a certain topic, that's 5 pages long, and you can't comprehend what that is. It's all numbers and innuendos and different law terms and Latin, like anybody in Washington, D.C. knows what Latin is.
Yeah. You know, and we've only mentioned the voting part. We didn't even get into the campaign finance and ethics, and we'll talk about that in a future podcast.
Yeah, as soon as I hurt my brain trying to read the rest of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing, and each issue needs to be dealt with one at a time, not shoving it down all our throats at once, thinking that we have a voting crisis. We don't. We have issues, yes. We don't need major changes. We need changes, yes. These politicians are something else.
Yeah. You know, there's another book we had read. It's called, from Mark Levin, The Liberty Amendments. He was right on that, too. He stated in one of the chapters that the Supreme Court judge should not be a lifetime appointment anymore because they're getting corrupted in D.C. too. Apparently, whatever they're serving at these cocktail parties in Washington, D.C. scrambles your brain. And you can't think for yourself. And I think by the time you get done with Washington, D.C., you lost so many marbles, you don't know how to work a doorknob.
That's a good one. Yeah, money.
Yeah, they know how to count money, though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They got plenty of paper cuts.
So, Jack, I think you want to talk about Texas.
I want to talk about Texas because Texas, it's a great state, and they're having a problem. I'm going to start with the first thing with Texas because it's the event that happened first. Texas was forced into green energy. And green energy is going to have its time on this planet, and we all know it. And it's a good thing. But it's not ready yet because Texas almost froze to death because green energy...
That's crazy.
Yeah, green energy doesn't work when it's freezing out, especially when you're in a state and it's not supposed to be freezing. But there goes that global warming. California's another one. You know, their green energy and their resources, because of their green energy, the state is burning down every year because they won't get rid of the underbrush, and they have brownouts all summer because the green energy is not strong enough to keep the air conditioners going. So they have brownouts all summer and fires all year, and you know, green energy is not ready. And the big factor about green energy is you have to be ready for the waste of green energy, because as much as I say there's no waste in green energy,
there is.
Those batteries are deadly. And what are we going to do with those batteries when they're done, when they can't take a charge anymore? Oh, yeah, I know what they're going to do. They're going to bury it in the sand in New Mexico again, like they did with the nuclear waste. Remember how that went? That was a genius. Again, these people are not forward-thinking. They're not innovators. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, I don't know how. Well, they don't go out by themselves.
Well, special interest dictates everything to them.
You know, another thing for Texas is I'm predicting Texas is going to have a spike in COVID-19. And I don't think it's because the governor was brave enough to say, you know what? This state of Texas, of the United States, has been under lockdown long enough. We are free. Be responsible. Be responsible for yourself. Be responsible for your family. Make sure you don't get your neighbor sick, but live your life. But that doesn't mean that they're not still going to get a COVID spike, because the federal government, in their infinite wisdom and their 30 years of comprehensive immigration law, are letting illegal immigrants come in without testing them. There's hundreds of them.
You see, I saw a thing on the news the other day that they tested, and like 100 people of these migrants coming over tested positive for COVID. What other diseases do these people have? These people are coming from third world countries. They don't have the same laws we do.
Smallpox.
TB. Back when I worked in a jail back in New York, a big thing back in the 80s and 90s was TB.
Yeah.
There was hundreds and hundreds of people.
Hepatitis.
Yeah.
Remember having to get the hepatitis shot? I had to get it.
Yep, I had to.
And I wasn't in you were in the prison.
Yep. I want to mention that my professor from my class, we had a discussion about Texas, and he challenges me with different questions. And he asked me about our political climate. And he asked me, is it our politicians or is it the leadership? And I replied, our politicians lack the leadership to be servant leaders. Servant leadership. There's not much to be said about that. You're there to serve the people in a leadership role. And I don't think they've done a good job.
Well, Dennis, let me ask your professor this question. How can somebody lead when they don't know who they're leading? They don't know us. They don't know our Constitution.
They don't want to
their
know
constituents.
Us. They don't want to know us.
No, they don't. They want to stay as far out. Listen, when these politicians wake up in the morning, the first thing they're thinking is, how do I get this constituency off my back?
They put the fence up.
Yeah.
That's the first way.
And armed the National Guard and have them facing us.
You see, they want to have a quick reaction force that can respond to anything.
Yeah.
So they want a permanent standing army in D.C.
So now who decides when you need this?
Yeah, is it the D.C. police? Is it the politicians?
But
is it the president?
What event causes that to get this group of guys out there? Now they're armed.
Yep. Can you see what's happening, folks? I know I do. It's our country's going in the wrong direction, and if we don't do something about it, we're going to lose it.
We have leaders in D.C. that don't know who they're supposed to be leading for. They don't know how to lead. They don't know how to make a law anymore. They don't know how to write bills. What are they there for? Anybody can sit behind a big giant desk, an office that has 3 rooms and a beautiful fireplace, and a staff and millions and millions and millions of dollars to run your office. These people don't know how to run anything.
But yet they're millionaires.
Yeah. And they're telling you
they can't even balance a budget, and they're telling us how to balance our checkbooks.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Again, the only thing they know how to do, catchy phrases.
Yeah.
Let me think of a catchy phrase.
Have you noticed that when they think of a phrase, every news channel has every politician saying the same thing? It's like they can't think for themselves.
Yeah. Who makes up the catchphrases now? You don't even know. You can't tell the news agency from the politician.
Yeah.
They speak the same language.
You got that right. But, hey, we're running short on time, folks. We didn't think we'd go this long. But some things we didn't talk about, we want to talk about. I want to talk about the new stimulus bill. But that H.R. 1, again, it's on our website. Take a look at it. You can read it for yourself and find out how confusing it is. But again, we're the United States Constitutional Group. Like I said, we're brand new. If you want to be a member, we'd love to have you. We'll be starting meetings here in Horry County, South Carolina in the near future. We're going to have some bylaws that we're finalizing. We're going to place that up on our webpage. But like I said, we're about education. And said Jack and I, we're not constitutional scholars by no means. But you know what? When you start looking into things, you start learning a lot. And Jack is so right. With knowledge is power. And if we all stand together, we can make great change for this country. Because this country is great, Jack.
It's the greatest. It's the greatest in spite of our leadership.
Hey, we just hit on a Declaration of Independence on a few things. Imagine all the other stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah, we went over an hour, and we didn't get through every line of the Declaration of Independence.
You didn't even scratch the surface of it.
No, and when the Constitution, that's big, But you're going to hear about all of it right here when you meet at the tavern.
We're going to talk about one section of our podcast every week is going to be about education of the Declaration, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Emancipation Proclamation, and our great history that we have. Another part is we're going to talk about political affairs and the political climate. So if there's anything in your state that you think people should know about, because you know what? South Carolina isn't dealing with problems. Look at New York. I mean, I wanted to talk about Governor Cuomo, but you know what? I'll get into that next week because I feel he should resign. Or if he doesn't resign, they need to impeach him. Didn't even talk about Governor Newsom, Governor Whitmer, you know, or look at how
Governor Wolf and Murphy,
you know, and we need to follow science when it comes to COVID. Didn't get into that. So, Jack, any last words?
No last words. I hope this turns into a great institute and a group. I hope everybody joins. I hope we meet at the Tavern multiple times a week, maybe not just once a week. And I think there's enough material.
We could probably do this every day.
We can do this every day, especially if you guys send us what's bothering you guys in your neck of the woods.
I'm sure there's a lot of issues out there. It's not just federal elections, it's state elections. If you're in a small rural town and you're hearing us, you got problems too. We all do.
The only thing I'll say before I get off this microphone is stay great because the American people are great.
Oh, you got that right. So I didn't get into HR 1319, which is the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. So we'll talk about that next week too. But again, United States Constitutional Group, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week, and we'll be at the Tavern.